welcome back to the deep dive. So if our first phase, looking at cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, was like getting the detailed blueprints for our minds.
Yeah, the diagnostic manual almost.
Right. Then this next phase feels like, well, it feels like we're finally getting the keys and learning how to drive the thing, especially when the road gets bumpy or, downright messy.
That's a really good way to put it. We definitely built a strong analytical foundation with CBT. We learned to understand those automatic thoughts, those reactions.
The automatisms, yeah.
Exactly, using things like the ABCDE model. We got the what and the why.
And honestly, that framework was incredibly helpful just for understanding the mechanics,
Yeah.
It gave me, and I think a lot of us, real self-knowledge about why certain things push our buttons.
But here's the twist, right? Sometimes that very knowledge became, part of the problem.
Okay, this is where it got really interesting and, frankly, a bit frustrating for me. I suspect many listeners felt this too. It felt like hitting this huge intellectual wall. The gap between knowing intellectually what I should do and actually doing it when emotions were running high, it felt massive. Impossible sometimes.
Right.
So you ended up analyzing things after the fact, looking back, dissecting the trigger, figuring out the perfect rational response you wish you'd had.
The ex-post analysis, we talked about that.
Exactly. But in the heat of the moment,
right,
when you're actually feeling it, it felt like zero access to that logical part. The theory, it didn't translate into real-time change.
And that feeling, that dissonance you're describing, that's really the core limitation of relying solely on the cognitive approach. I mean, think about the name. Cognitive behavioral therapy.
Right. Emphasis on cognitive.
It often tries to solve problems that bubble up from a really biological, non-rational, emotional place by using more rationality for people who are already quite analytical, quite cognitive.
Like trying to put out a fire with a spreadsheet, you said.
Yeah.
I like that.
It is. When strong emotions take the wheel, the logical brain kind of takes a back seat. Trying to force a purely cognitive fix in that moment often just leads to more frustration, maybe even shame, not actual change.
So the analysis itself wasn't flawed, but maybe the assumption that just knowing is enough to override a powerful biological emotional wave. That was the issue. We needed practical handles or levers, not just a better map.
Precisely. And that is exactly why we're making this a pretty significant shift for this next phase. We're diving into dialectical behavior therapy, DBT.
DBT too.
Think of DBT as the missing piece, the operator's manual maybe. It's the approach that directly, explicitly targets that emotional intensity that CBT often, implicitly kind of sidestepped.
So for those of us who are strong thinkers, maybe overthinkers, DBT is the necessary step into that maybe uncomfortable but skill-based zone where the real growth actually happens.
Well, that's the idea. It's where the rubber meets the road, integrating the analysis into lived experience.
Okay, let's unpack this then. If CBT was the blueprint, focused a lot on cognition, and DBT is the toolbox, does that mean DBT is focused only on emotions? What happens the second that match lights the fuse?
It's definitely focused more on the emotional experience and how to handle it in the moment, yes. But it's not just about that initial flare-up.
But wait, the phrase everyone associates with DBT is radical acceptance, right? I've wondered about that. Doesn't just accepting a negative emotion or situation risk, letting yourself off the hook? How is that proactive? How does that lead to change?
That's a fantastic question. And it gets right to the heart of why it's called dialectical behavior therapy. The dialectical part is crucial.
Okay.
DBT is built on this core idea of synthesizing two things that seem like total opposites: acceptance and change.
Acceptance and change at the same time. How does that work?
Yes, simultaneously. It's dialectical because it demands that you radically accept reality exactly as it is in this present moment. No judgment, no fighting it, just acknowledging this is what is happening. And at the same time, you hold the knowledge and commitment that you need to work, sometimes really hard, to change your behaviors and your circumstances for the better.
So if you don't accept where you are first,
you waste all your energy fighting reality. This shouldn't be happening. It's not fair. All that energy goes into resistance, leaving nothing left for actually making a change.
Wow, okay, that reframes it completely. It's not acceptance instead of change. It's acceptance as the foundation for change. That makes sense.
Exactly. It's the prerequisite.
So beyond that core philosophical difference, the focus on emotion and this dialectic of acceptance and change.
Mm.
What's the other big structural difference from CBT?
The other major shift is from focusing primarily on structure to focusing heavily on skill.
Skill.
Yeah. CBT gave us that great analytical structure, like the ABCDE model, which is brilliant for looking back, for understanding.
Right.
Retrospect, DBT is built almost entirely around teaching core practical skills. Skills designed to train your mind, even your body, specifically for that split second. That tiny window of choice before the automatic, often unhelpful response completely takes over.
Okay, I want to hear about these skills. Let's get into them. What are these core modules in DBT that promise this kind of real-time control?
All right. DBT is structured around 4 main skills modules. They're interdependent, they build on each other. But the absolute bedrock, the foundation for everything else, is Module 1, mindfulness.
Mindfulness. Okay, that word is everywhere these days.
Yeah.
How does DBT approach it? Is it just meditation?
It's much broader than just meditation, although meditation is a key practice for building mindfulness. In DBT, mindfulness is the essential core skill because, well, think about it. Without it, you can't even recognize what's happening inside you, the thought, the emotion, the urge.
If you're not aware, you can't change it.
Precisely. If you aren't present enough to even notice the trigger or the first spark of emotion, you certainly can't pause and apply a different skill. You're just running on autopilot.
I remember reading something that really struck me, this idea that we spend something like, 98% of our mental time either stuck in the past.
Ruminating, regretting, analyzing.
Yeah. Or lost in the future, worrying, planning, anticipating.
Yeah.
And only maybe 2%, maybe, are we actually fully here in the present moment?
That imbalance is exactly what mindfulness aims to address. It's not about never thinking about the past or future. We absolutely need the past for learning and the future for planning and goals.
Of course.
But we need the present moment for living.
Yeah.
For actually experiencing life and, crucially, for acting effectively. If you're sitting in a meeting worrying about dinner or replaying an argument from yesterday while someone's talking to you, you're not really there. You're not effective.
It's like that example of being in bed trying to sleep, but your mind is racing about tomorrow's presentation or dissecting something you said earlier. The here and now is bed, sleep, not future tripping or past dwelling.
Exactly. Your mind needs to be where your body is, doing what needs to be done now.
Okay, but let's push back a little on the whole live in the moment thing, because, I see people who are very present. They're presently scrolling Instagram for hours or presently binge watching a show or presently eating way past fullness. That's being here and now, technically.
But that's a critical distinction. That's more like hedonistic presence or maybe mindless presence, instant gratification. DBT mindfulness isn't about just passively existing in the moment, whatever it brings.
Right.
It's about cultivating intentional awareness, conscious presence. The modern world, as you pointed out, is basically a constant battle for our attention. All these stimuli are designed to hijack our present moment, often in ways that are actually damaging to our future selves.
Social media, endless notifications, streaming.
Exactly. DBT mindfulness skills help us develop the ability to consciously choose where we place our attention, to step out of that automatic, often detrimental flow. It's training the brain for focus and awareness.
And you mentioned we'll dive deeper into things like the RAIN concept, dialectical thinking itself, and the wise mind within mindfulness later.
Absolutely. Those are key concepts we'll explore in our dedicated mindfulness deep dive. But for now, just know it's the foundation.
Okay, foundation laid with mindfulness. If we're building up from there, what's the next module? What gives us immediate help when things get really tough?
That takes us straight to Module 2, distress tolerance.
Distress tolerance. Sounds like emotional first aid. Surviving the crisis.
That's exactly what it is. Think of it like this. If mindfulness is about building the awareness to see the emotional storm coming, distress tolerance gives you the tools to ride out the initial wave when it hits hard.
Okay.
Imagine that dam bursting, like you said. The emotional flood is happening. This module provides practical, often very concrete methods you can use right in that moment to cope with intense stress or crisis, to mitigate the immediate impact.
So the goal isn't necessarily to fix the underlying problem right then and there.
Not immediately, no. That comes later. The primary goal of distress tolerance is simply to survive the crisis without making things worse. It's about reducing that overwhelming, automatic, often destructive response. The yelling, the shutting down, the impulsive action.
Creating a little bit of space.
Exactly. Creating just enough of a window to avoid doing something you'll regret. It's about getting through the flood without digging the hole deeper.
That makes a lot of sense. Survive first, then figure out the plumbing, which I guess leads us to the next module.
It does. Once you have the skills to tolerate the immediate distress, you can move on to Module 3, emotion regulation.
Okay, so if distress tolerance is surviving the flood.
Emotion regulation is about building better levees, maybe installing some drainage systems. It's the longer-term work.
Got it. Managing the flow.
Precisely. This module focuses directly on understanding your emotions, reducing vulnerability to negative emotions, and learning how to shift or manage feelings over time, not just survive the peaks.
And this is where some of those well-known DBT tools come in, right?
Oh,
like
well.
acronyms.
Yes. Tools like S02E, which stands for stop, take a step back, observe, proceed mindfully. It's an immediate pausing technique. And please, which covers treating physical illness, balanced eating, avoiding mood-altering substances, balanced sleep, and exercise. Those are foundational for long-term emotional stability.
And I know we're planning to really dig into some practical techniques here too, like the flip it or do the opposite action method. That sounds incredibly powerful for countering strong impulses.
It really is. Acting opposite to the emotion's urge can be a game changer. We'll also spend time looking at psychological projection.
Ah, interesting. Not just spotting it in other people, which is kind of easy.
Exactly. The real work, the genuine emotional growth, comes from learning to recognize and gently disarm our own projections, seeing how we might be attributing our own stuff onto others. That takes courage and self-awareness.
Which feels like a perfect bridge to the final module. How do we handle all this, our emotions, our projections, when we interact with other people who have their own stuff going on?
That leads us beautifully to the fourth module, which is a really significant differentiator from traditional CBT, interpersonal effectiveness.
Right, because CBT sometimes felt quite focused on the individual, almost in isolation.
It often did, yeah.
Right.
Interpersonal effectiveness directly addresses how to navigate the complexities of relationships, how to function effectively with others in the real world.
Because, let's face it, the world is full of other people.
Yeah.
And they all have their own needs, their own triggers, their own projections, their own problems.
Precisely. This module gives you concrete skills for things like communicating your needs clearly and respectfully, saying no effectively, setting boundaries, asking for what you want, and maintaining self-respect even during conflict.
And I think we're planning to focus specifically on boundary management here. That feels huge.
Absolutely crucial. How do you even identify your boundaries? How do you communicate them clearly? And just as importantly, how do you protect them when they're tested? We'll also connect this to managing time as a finite, non-renewable resource. Because often, protecting your time is fundamentally about protecting your interpersonal boundaries. Saying no to requests that drain you is a boundary issue.
It all ties together. Hearing this whole structure, it's really powerful knowing where it came from.
Yeah.
The Dr. Marsha Linehan developed DBT partly because she herself struggled intensely and found the purely rational therapies weren't enough.
Yes, her personal experience is baked into the very DNA of DBT. It came from a place of profound struggle and the recognition that insight alone, pure rationality, wasn't sufficient for deep, lasting change, especially with intense emotional pain.
It wasn't just an academic exercise for her. It was born out of necessity, which maybe explains why it includes some things that feel almost like, well, life hacks. Things like the flip-its technique or some of the quick distress tolerance skills. They feel like those practical tools we were missing with just CBT, the things you can actually do in the moment.
They absolutely are practical tools, those life hacks, as you call them. And they're incredibly valuable. But, our goal here is always to go a bit deeper, to provide the why behind the what.
Right, the wider concept.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So these tools don't just become empty rituals you perform without understanding. For example, we'll talk about meditation not just as deep breathing to calm down, but as a fundamental practice to train the brain's attention networks, which is essential for true mindfulness. The tool serves the larger skill.
So tying it all together, if CBT gave us the map, the analysis, and DBT gives us the practical driving skills, the emotional toolkit.
Yeah.
What's the ultimate destination? What's the combined goal here?
The ultimate goal, really, across both CBT and DBT, is to dramatically expand your capacity for conscious choice.
Choice.
Yes. To gain enough mastery over your own internal machinery, your thoughts, your emotions, your impulses, so that you are the one directing your life, not just reacting to it. It's about moving beyond being stuck in rigid patterns or singular ways of being.
Like not always having to be the rational one or the emotional one or the people pleaser.
Exactly. It's about gaining the flexibility and the freedom to choose the most effective response, whether that's analytical or emotionally accepting or assertive or compassionate, depending on what the situation actually calls for. More options, more freedom.
It feels like a really complete picture. From self-understanding with CBT to practical resilience and effective relating with DBT, it closes the loop.
It really does aim to provide a more holistic skill set. And since our very next deep dive is going to be entirely focused on that foundational module, mindfulness,
Right.
I want to give you and everyone listening a little piece of pre-work, a small assignment for the next few days.
Okay, I'm ready. What is it?
Instead of trying to immediately label your emotions when you feel something strong, I want you to focus first on simply identifying the physiological cues, the physical sensations in your body. Think of it as noticing your body's own internal alarm system.
So not I feel angry, but more like noticing the physical signs before the label.
Precisely. When you feel triggered, just check in with your body. Is your heart rate speeding up?
Okay.
Are your muscles getting tense? Shoulders, jaw, fists? How's your breathing? Is it shallow, rapid? Notice things like, does your vision seem to narrow when you're stressed? Or do you feel a physical pull, like wanting to move towards something or away from something?
Those subtle physical shifts.
Yes. Those subtle, or sometimes not so subtle, body reactions are often the very first signals. They're the alarm bells telling you an emotion is present, maybe even before your conscious mind fully registers or labels it. Tuning into that physical awareness is the essential first step into mindfulness. It's the entry point for applying all the other DBT skills we're going to talk about.
That is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's challenging but incredibly practical. A perfect starting point for this new phase. Thank you for laying out this whole framework for us. I'm really looking forward to diving deep into mindfulness next time.
My pleasure. It's going to be a great exploration. Thank you.
Farewell, everyone.